I'm John Mitchell, 68 years old, and I've spent most of my life right here in Millbrook, Ohio, a town where the population barely breaks 5,000, where Main Street still has the same diner that served my parents their wedding breakfast in 1952, and where everyone knows your name before you've finished introducing yourself. This is the kind of place where Memorial Day parades wang through streets lined with American flags, where the high school football games on Friday nights draw half the town, and where the 4th of July fireworks over Henderson Lake have been a tradition since before I was born. I built my house with these hands, not metaphorically, literally. Every beam, every nail, every coat of paint. I bought this plot of land in 1979, right after I came back from Vietnam and married my sweet Margaret. The lot was nothing but weeds and rocks back then, sitting on the edge of town where Maple Street meets the old county road. People thought I was crazy, buying land so far from the center of things. Nothing out there but coyotes and cornfields, old Mr. Henderson told me at the hardware store. But I saw something different. I saw space for a garden, room for kids to run, and enough distance from the noise to hear myself think. Margaret and I lived in a tiny apartment above the pharmacy for the first 2 years of our marriage while I saved every penny from my carpentry work. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning, work construction sites until 3, then head to the lot to clear brush and level ground until the sun went down. Margaret would bring me dinner wrapped in aluminum foil meatloaf sandwiches, fried chicken, whatever she could pack, and sit with me at an overturned bucket while I ate, telling me about her day at the elementary school where she taught 2nd grade. "You're building our future," she'd say, squeezing my shoulder as mosquitoes buzzed around us in the summer heat. And I was. Every weekend, my buddies from the VFW would come help. Tommy Rodriguez, who'd been my bunkmate in Da Nang, knew plumbing. Bill Crawford, who'd lost part of his left hand to shrapnel, could still frame a wall better than anyone I knew. We'd work all day Saturday and Sunday, then gather on my half-finished porch with a cooler of Budweiser, watching the sun set over the cornfields while our wives chatted and our kids, those who had them, chased fireflies in the yard. By the spring of 1981, we moved in. The house wasn't finished. The upstairs was still exposed studs and insulation, but we had walls, a roof, and running water. Margaret cried when I carried her over the threshold, and I'm not ashamed to say I did too. That house represented everything we'd fought for, everything we'd survived. It was proof that a working man could still build something solid in this world. Luke was born in 1982, right there in our bedroom on a snowy January night, when the roads were too iced over for us to make it to the hospital in time. Dot Patterson, who delivered half the babies in Millbrook over 40 years, showed up on cross-country skis with his medical bag. Margaret gripped my hand so hard she left marks, and when Luke finally came into the world, screaming and red-faced and perfect, I knew I'd never build anything more important than the life we were creating in that house. I finished the upstairs that summer, insulated the attic the next fall, and added the screened-in porch in 1985. Every improvement was planned, saved for, and completed with my own hands. When Luke was 5, we planted an oak tree in the front yard together, his small hands helping me pat down the dirt around the sapling. "This tree's gonna be here long after we're gone, buddy," I told him, "just like this house. We're building something that lasts." Luke grew up in that house, in that town. He learned to ride his bike on Maple Street, crashing into Mrs. Henderson's rosebushes at least 3 times before he got the hang of it. He played Little League at the park, where I coached his team for 6 years straight, never missing a practice even when I was exhausted from work. I taught him to fish at the lake, showed him how to bait a hook and cast a line, and we'd sit in comfortable silence for hours, watching the bobber float on the water while the sun warmed our faces. Every Thanksgiving, we'd host dinner for the neighborhood. Margaret would spend days preparing turkey, stuffing, green bean casserole, 3 kinds of pie. Our dining room table, which I'd built from reclaimed barnwood, would be packed with neighbors, the Hendersons, the Rodriguezes, the Crawfords, families who'd become our family. After dinner, Luke and the other kids would play touch football in the backyard while we adults sat around the fire pit. I'd built from stones gathered along the creek, drinking coffee and telling stories. Christmas was even bigger. I'd string lights along every edge of the house, so many that our electric bill doubled in December, but I didn't care. The whole neighborhood did it. It was a competition of sorts, to see who could make their house shine the brightest. On Christmas Eve, we'd drive through town looking at decorations. Luke pressed against the car window, his breath fogging the glass as he pointed out his favorites. Then we'd come home, and I'd read him "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" by the fireplace. Margaret beside us with hot cocoa, the smell of pine from our tree filling the room. Memorial Day meant decorating the graves of veterans at the town cemetery. Luke helping me place flags on each marker while I told him stories about the men and women who'd served. 4th of July meant our block party grills smoking, kids running through sprinklers, adults playing cornhole and horseshoes until the sun went down and we all gathered at the lake for fireworks. Halloween meant Luke and the neighborhood kids trick-or-treating while I handed out full-size candy bars from our porch. Margaret beside me in a witch hat she'd worn for 20 years. This was our life, simple, maybe by some standards, but rich in the ways that mattered. Luke was a bright kid, always reading, always asking questions. He devoured books about space, about history, about places far beyond Ohio. "You think I could see the world someday, Dad?" He'd ask, and I'd ruffle his hair and say, "Son, you can do anything you set your mind to." I meant it. I wanted him to dream big, to reach for things I'd never had the chance to reach for. When he graduated high school in 2000, he was valedictorian. I sat in that auditorium, my chest so full of pride I thought it might burst. Watching him give a speech about pursuing your dreams and never settling for less than you're capable of. Margaret cried, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, and I squeezed her hand. Our boy was going places. He got accepted to Ohio State University on a scholarship. Columbus was only 2 hours away, but to us, it might as well have been across the country. We loaded up my old pickup truck with boxes and helped him move into his dorm room, a tiny space he'd share with a roommate from Cleveland. "This is just the beginning," Luke said, hugging us goodbye in the parking lot. "I'm gonna make you proud." "You already have, son," I told him, and he did make us proud. He studied business, made the dean's list, joined clubs, networked with people who seemed to speak a different language than us talking about markets and ventures and opportunities. When he came home for holidays, he'd tell us about his plans, his ambitions. He wanted to work in real estate development, he said. "Build something big. Like you built this house, Dad," he'd say. But on a bigger scale. I'd nod and smile, but part of me wondered if he understood that building something with your hands was different than building something on paper. Still, I was proud. My son was going to be something. After college, Luke moved to Chicago. He got a job with a development firm, started climbing the corporate ladder. His visits home became less frequent, once every few months, then once or twice a year. He'd call on holidays, his voice bright and busy, always rushing off to meetings or client dinners. Margaret would get sad after the calls, quietly washing dishes or folding laundry with tears in her eyes. "He's just building his career," I'd tell her. "He'll come around when he settles down." In 2015, Margaret got sick. The doctors found cancer, and it spread faster than any of us expected. Luke came home when I called him, his face pale and drawn. He sat with her in the hospital, held her hand, told her about his life in the city. But he had to leave for a critical meeting before she passed. I was alone with her at the end, holding her hand as she took her last breath, the beeping of the machines fading to a long, steady tone. Luke came back for the funeral. He cried, gave a beautiful eulogy about how much she'd meant to him. But 3 days later, he was gone again, back to Chicago, back to his life. I understood, or I tried to. People grieve differently. People have responsibilities. I was alone in the house after that. The neighbors checked on me, brought casseroles, invited me to dinners, made sure I wasn't isolated. Tommy Rodriguez started coming by every Saturday morning. And we'd work on projects around the house, fixing things that didn't really need fixing, just to keep busy. Bill Crawford and I went fishing most Sundays. The town rallied around me the way small towns do, because that's what family does, and in Millbrook, everyone's family. Luke called every few weeks. We'd talk about sports, about the weather, about nothing much at all. He mentioned he was dating someone, Amanda, a marketing executive he'd met through work. "She's amazing, Dad," he'd say. "You'd like her. I wanted to meet her, but the invitations never came. We're so busy," he'd say. Soon, though, soon. Then, in early 2023, he called with big news. He and Amanda were getting married. "It'll be small," he said. "Just a courthouse thing in Chicago, you understand, right? Neither of us wants a big fuss." I swallowed my disappointment. "Congratulations, son. I'm happy for you." "Thanks, Dad. We'll come visit soon, I promise." But they didn't. Not that year, anyway. Cards came on my birthday, on Christmas, but no visits. I told myself they were busy, building their life together. I told myself I understood. The call came in March 2025, as the snow was finally melting, and the first crocuses were pushing through the dirt around Margaret's oak tree. "Dad, Amanda and I need to talk to you about something," Luke said. "Can we come visit next weekend?" My heart leapt. "Of course. I'd love to see you both." That weekend, I cleaned the house top to bottom, bought steaks for the grill, stocked the fridge with beer. I was excited, nervous even. I hadn't seen my son in almost 3 years. I wanted to make a good impression on Amanda, show her where Luke came from, share stories about his childhood. When their car pulled into the driveway, a sleek black SUV that probably cost more than I'd made in 5 years, I was waiting on the porch. Luke got out first, and my breath caught. He looked older, harder somehow. His hair was styled in a way that looked expensive, and his clothes were crisp and designer. But when he smiled, I saw my boy. "Dad!" He came up the steps and hugged me, and for a moment, everything felt right. Then Amanda got out of the car. She was beautiful in a polished, intimidating way, blonde hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, clothes that screamed money. Her heels clicked on the driveway as she approached, her smile bright but somehow cold. "You must be John," she said, extending a manicured hand. "I've heard so much about you." I shook her hand, her grip limp and brief. "Welcome to Millbrook, Amanda. Come on in, I've got dinner ready to start." They followed me inside, and I watched Amanda's eyes scan the living room, the worn couch Margaret and I had bought at a yard sale 30 years ago, the handmade coffee table, the walls covered in family photos and Luke's childhood artwork. Her expression was neutral, but I saw something flicker across her face. Judgment, maybe, or disappointment. "It's quaint," she said. Luke cleared his throat. "Dad's kept everything just like Mom left it. It's our home," I said simply. "Have a seat. Can I get you something to drink?" We sat awkwardly in the living room, them on the couch, me in my recliner, Margaret's reading chair still empty beside me, like always. I asked about their life in Chicago, their jobs, their apartment. Amanda talked about her marketing campaigns, her clients, her networking events. Luke talked about deals and developments. I nodded along, trying to follow, but it all felt like a foreign language. Finally, over dinner steaks I'd grilled, potatoes, a salad, Luke got to the point. "Dad, we wanted to talk to you about the house." I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth. "What about it?" Luke exchanged a glance with Amanda. She gave him a small nod. "Well, we've been thinking," he continued. "You're getting older, Dad. This house is a lot to maintain. And frankly, you're sitting on a valuable asset here." "It's my home, Luke." "We know," Amanda interjected, her voice smooth. "But practically speaking, it doesn't make sense for you to stay here alone. You should be somewhere easier to manage. A senior community, maybe. Somewhere with support services." My jaw tightened. "I'm 68, not 90. I don't need support services." "Not yet," Luke said quickly, "but eventually. And this house, Dad, real estate values in this area are going up. This property could be worth something significant. It doesn't make sense to just sit on it. It's my house, I repeated, my voice harder now. I built it. Your mother and I raised you here, and we're grateful for that, Amanda said, that cold smile back on her face. But Luke is your heir. Eventually, this house will be his anyway. Why not transfer it now? It would save on taxes, make things simpler in the long run. I looked at my son. Is this why you came? After 3 years? Luke had the decency to look uncomfortable. Dad, it's not like that. We wanted to see you. But yes, we also think this would be better for everyone. You could move into a nice condo, something manageable. We'd take care of the house, maybe fix it up, and when the time is right, we could sell it and make sure you're taken care of for the rest of your life. I don't need anyone to take care of me, I said. And I'm not selling this house. The rest of dinner was tense. They spent the night, Luke in his old bedroom, Amanda clearly uncomfortable with the dated decor, and the next morning, the conversation started again. Dad, be reasonable, Luke said over coffee. This is about your future. Our future as a family. But something in the way Amanda looked around my kitchen, like she was appraising it, calculating its value, made my blood run cold. This wasn't about my well-being. This was about money. I need to think about it, I said, just to end the conversation. They left that afternoon, Amanda barely hiding her frustration, Luke promising to call soon. I stood on my porch and watched them drive away, my heart heavy with something I couldn't quite name. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The weeks after their visit were strange. I'd catch myself standing in the kitchen, staring at nothing, replaying the conversation in my head. Luke's words kept echoing. This house will be his anyway, like I was already gone. Like my life, my home, my memories were just items on a balance sheet waiting to be cashed in. I tried to shake it off. I busied myself with spring projects, repairing the porch railing that had loosened over winter, cleaning out the gutters, spreading fresh mulch around Margaret's oak tree. Tommy Rodriguez came by most Saturdays like clockwork, and we'd work together in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only comes from decades of friendship. You seem distracted, Tommy said one afternoon as we replaced some rotted boards on the back deck. I hammered a nail harder than necessary. Luke visited a few weeks back. That's good, isn't it? Been a while. Yeah. I measured the next board, marked it with my pencil. He wants me to sign over the house to him. Tommy's hands stilled on his drill. Come again? Says I'm getting too old to maintain it. Says it would be better for everyone if I moved to a senior community and they took over the property. You're 68, not ancient. Hell, you're in better shape than half the guys at the VFW who are younger. That's what I said. I positioned the board and started nailing. But Amanda, that's his wife. She looked around this place like it was some kind of condemned shack. Like everything I built wasn't good enough. Tommy was quiet for a moment. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it. But Tom, I don't know what to think. Is he right? Am I being selfish holding on to this place? Selfish? Tommy set down his drill and looked at me square. John, you built this house with your bare hands. You raised your family here. Margaret's in every corner of this place. Selfish would be giving it up because your kid wants to turn it into a profit. His words settled something in me, but the doubt lingered. Maybe I was just an old man clinging to the past. Maybe Luke did know better. The calls started coming more frequently after that. Luke would phone every few days, always with the same message delivered in slightly different ways. Have you thought more about what we discussed? Amanda and I have been looking at some really nice retirement communities. Dad were just trying to plan ahead, and then they showed up again. No warning this time, just pulled into the driveway on a Saturday morning in late April when Tommy and I were finishing our coffee before starting work on the garage door. Expecting company? Tommy asked as the black SUV rolled up. No, I said, standing up. That's Luke, Tommy whistled low. You want me to stick around? Might be good if you did. Luke and Amanda got out, both dressed casually this time. though Amanda's casual still looked like it cost more than my entire wardrobe. Luke's smile was tight. Hey. Sorry we didn't call ahead. We were driving through and thought we'd stop by. Driving through? I repeated. Chicago to where? Columbus, Amanda said quickly. Business meeting. Thought we'd take the scenic route. Millbrook was 40 miles off the highway. Not exactly on the way, but I didn't say that. Tommy, you remember Luke? Sure do. Good to see you, son. Tommy shook Luke's hand, then nodded at Amanda. Ma'am. We were hoping to talk to Dad alone, Luke said, and there was something in his voice that made my shoulders tense. Tommy's family, I said. Whatever you need to say, you can say it in front of him. Amanda's smile turned brittle. It's family business, John. And Tommy's been more family to me than most in the last few years, I said evenly. Luke's face flushed. Dad, come on. Don't make this difficult. I'm not making anything difficult. You showed up without calling. I'm just living my life. They stayed anyway. Tommy made excuses and left, but not before squeezing my shoulder and murmuring, call if you need me. Then I was alone with them, and the conversation I'd been dreading picked right back up where it had left off. We sat in the living room again. Luke on the couch, Amanda beside him, me in my recliner. Only this time, Amanda pulled out a folder. John, we've done some research, she said, spreading papers on the coffee table. The property values in this area have increased significantly in the last 5 years. Your house with this much land is worth approximately $750,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. When I bought this land, I'd paid $18,000. That can't be right. It is, Luke said. Dad, that's what we're trying to tell you. You're sitting on a gold mine, and you're not getting any younger. If something happened to you, then the house goes to you, I finished. That's how inheritance works. But estate taxes, Amanda said. Probate. It could eat up half the value. If you transfer the property to Luke now, we avoid all that. You could even continue living here if that's what you want. We'd just be the legal owners. Something cold settled in my stomach. So I'd be living in your house. Technically, yes, Amanda said. But nothing would change for you day to day. Everything would change. I'd be a guest in my own home. I looked at Luke, searching for the boy I'd raised, the kid who'd helped me plant that oak tree, who'd sat beside me in church every Sunday, who'd told me he'd make me proud. Is this really what you want, son? Luke wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad, it's just practical. I'm trying to protect your interests. My interests, I repeated. Or yours. That's not fair, he said, anger flashing. You know how hard I've worked to get where I am. I didn't have it easy like you did. Easy? The word came out sharp. You think building this house was easy? Working construction 12 hours a day, coming home to work on my own land until I couldn't see straight, living above a pharmacy for 2 years while saving every penny. You had a community, Luke shot back. Everyone here helped you. I had to do everything on my own. Because you chose to leave, I said quietly. Nobody forced you to go to Chicago. We supported your dreams. And now I'm trying to support you, Luke said. Why can't you see that? Because I could see Amanda's cold calculation in every word. Because I could see that my son had learned to measure everything in dollar signs. Because the boy who'd once helped me build this house didn't seem to exist anymore. I need more time, I said. They stayed for lunch, but it was strained. Amanda kept checking her phone, and Luke barely spoke. When they left, Amanda kissed my cheek cold and brief, and Luke hugged me, but it felt obligatory. Think about it, Dad, he said. Really think about it. I watched them drive away, and for the first time since Margaret died, I felt truly alone. The next month was a blur of phone calls, visits, and pressure that never let up. Luke and Amanda came by every weekend, sometimes staying overnight in Luke's old room. They'd bring takeout from upscale restaurants in Columbus. Their way of being nice, I suppose. But the food always tasted like ash in my mouth, because I knew what came with it, more conversations about the house. More papers spread on my coffee table, more polite insistence that I was being unreasonable. "Just sign here, Dad," Luke would say, pointing to signature lines on documents I didn't fully understand. "It's just a preliminary agreement. Nothing binding," but I never signed. Something in me, some stubborn streak that had seen me through Vietnam and building this house and losing Margaret, wouldn't let me. Even when Luke's voice got harder, when Amanda's smiles turned to barely concealed irritation, when they started talking to me like I was a child who didn't understand what was good for him. "John, you're being difficult for no reason," Amanda said one Sunday afternoon in May. We were in the kitchen, and she was rearranging my pantry without asking. "This house is wasted on you. One person doesn't need all this space." "It's my home," I said, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. "I built it for my family." "Your family," she repeated, pulling out expired cans I'd been meaning to toss. "Your wife is dead. Your son lives 3 hours away." "What family?" The words were like a slap. Luke was in the garage, looking at my tools, or he might have said something. But he wasn't there to hear his wife dismiss my entire life as worthless. "You should leave," I said quietly. Amanda turned, her expression sharp. "Excuse me. I said you should leave. This is still my house, and I'm asking you to leave." She stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed her purse and walked out without a word. Luke came back in minutes later, his face stormy. "What did you say to Amanda?" "I asked her to leave. And I'm asking you the same. Dad, for Christ's sake." "Luke," I looked at my son, really looked at him. "When did you stop being my boy and start being someone I don't recognize?" His face went through several emotions: anger, hurt, confusion. Finally, he just shook his head. "We'll talk when you're ready to be reasonable." They left. And this time, I was glad to see them go. But the pressure didn't stop. Luke started calling the neighbors. Mrs. Henderson told me he'd phoned her, asking about my health, whether she'd noticed me slipping. Tommy got a call too, with Luke asking if I was safe living alone, if I was managing my finances properly. "He's trying to build a case," Tommy said, his jaw tight. "Make you look incompetent so he can get power of attorney or something." "He can't do that," I said, but uncertainty crept in. "Can he?" "Not without proof. But John, you need to protect yourself." "Have you talked to a lawyer?" I hadn't. The thought of going to war with my own son made me sick. But Tommy was right. I needed to understand my options. That's when I remembered Frank Dawson. Frank and I went way back high school, actually. He'd been a couple years ahead of me, but we'd reconnected at the VFW after I came back from Vietnam. Frank had gone to law school on the GI Bill, eventually opened a practice in Millbrook handling mostly property law, wills, and small business stuff. We'd stayed friendly over the years, and I'd helped him build a deck on his house back in 1987. I called him on a Tuesday morning. "Frank, I need some legal advice." "John, long time. What's going on?" I told him everything: Luke's visits, the pressure to sign over the house, Amanda's cold calculation, the calls to neighbors. Frank listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Can you come to my office this afternoon? Bring any paperwork you have related to the house deed, will, anything Luke's given you." I gathered what I could find. The original deed from 1979, yellowed and creased from being folded in a drawer for decades. The will Margaret and I had made together in 2005, simple and straightforward. And the papers Luke had been pushing at me, which I'd stuffed in a folder without signing. Frank's office was in a converted Victorian on Main Street, all dark wood and leather chairs. He looked older than I remembered, we all did, but his eyes were still sharp. He poured us coffee and spread the papers across his desk. "Okay," he said after reading for several minutes. "Let's start with the good news. You haven't signed anything, which means you still have full legal ownership and control of your property. This deed is clear. The house and land are solely in your name. Margaret's name was removed after her death according to your joint will, which properly transferred her interest to you. What about Luke? He keeps saying the house will be his anyway." Frank pulled out my will. According to this, yes, Luke is your sole heir. Upon your death, the property would go to him. But that's upon your death, John, not before. As long as you're alive and competent, this house is yours to do with as you please. He's been calling people, asking if I'm slipping. Frank's expression darkened. That's concerning. Is there any truth to it? Any reason to think you're not capable of managing your affairs? Hell no, I said. I'm the same as I've always been. Maybe a little slower, but my mind's sharp. Then he doesn't have a leg to stand on. Even if he tried to claim incompetence, he'd need medical evidence, and a judge would have to agree. From what I can see, you're fully capable. Relief washed through me, but it was tinged with sadness. My son was trying to build a case against me, my own boy. Frank, there's something else. I hesitated, not sure how to ask. The house. Amanda said it's worth $750,000. Is that right? Frank leaned back in his chair. Possibly. Have you been following the development proposals for this area? What development? He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then turned it to show me. It was a news article from the Columbus Dispatch, dated 3 weeks ago. Tech company proposes major development in rural Ohio. I read quickly, my heart sinking with every word. A California tech company was planning a massive campus just outside Millbrook offices, housing, retail, the works. They were buying up land along the old county road. My land was right in the path of their expansion zone. When did this happen? I asked. The proposal went public about a month ago, Frank said. But word's been circulating in real estate circles for at least 6 months. Some folks have already sold to the company's land acquisition team for significant premiums. If this goes through, properties in the target area could be worth millions, not thousands, millions. The word didn't feel real. John, did Luke know about this development before he started asking for the house? I thought back to their first visit in March, how Luke had talked about real estate values going up, how Amanda had known the exact appraisal value. He works in real estate development, I said slowly. In Chicago. Then he probably knew, Frank said grimly. This is big news in development circles. If he's connected to that world, he'd have heard about it. My son had known. He'd known my property was about to be worth a fortune. And instead of telling me, instead of helping me understand what was happening, he'd tried to trick me into signing it over to him. The betrayal cut deeper than any of Amanda's cold words or Luke's pressure. This wasn't about protecting me or planning for my future. This was about taking what was mine before I realized what it was worth. What do I do? I asked Frank. First, you do nothing. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Second, you might want to get an updated appraisal of your property, just so you know exactly what you're sitting on. Third, double quotes, he paused, choosing his words carefully. John, I'm going to be straight with you. If Luke knows about this development and has been trying to get you to sign over your property without telling you about it, that's a serious ethical problem. It might even be legally actionable. You might want to consider updating your will. Change who gets the house. At least consider it. Add conditions, maybe, or create a trust. The point is to protect yourself and make sure your wishes are clear. Because if Luke is willing to manipulate you now, I don't trust what he might do after you're gone. The words hung in the air like smoke. I'd come in looking for reassurance, and instead I'd discovered my son's deception ran even deeper than I'd known. Let me think about it, I said. Don't think too long, Frank advised. If that development deal goes through, the pressure on you is only going to increase. And John, be careful. When this much money is at stake, people do desperate things. I left his office in a daze. The afternoon sun was bright on Main Street, and everything looked normal. The diner, the hardware store, the barber shop where I'd been getting my hair cut for 40 years. But nothing felt normal. My world had shifted on its axis, and I didn't know which way was up anymore. That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer and watched the sun set over the cornfields. Margaret's oak tree swayed in the breeze, its leaves rustling like whispers. I thought about all the years I'd spent building this life, this house, this home. I thought about Luke as a boy, helping me hammer nails and plant trees and dream about the future. And I thought about the man he'd become, who saw his father's home as nothing more than a business opportunity. My phone rang. Luke's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. Again. I turned off the phone. Whatever came next, I needed to be ready. Because Frank was right, when this much money was at stake, people did desperate things. And I had a feeling I hadn't seen desperate yet. Luke and Amanda showed up unannounced the next weekend. I was in the garden, tending to the tomato plants I'd put in a few weeks earlier, Margaret's heirloom variety, the seeds passed down from her mother. I heard their car before I saw it, that smooth engine sound so different from the rumble of my old pickup. Dad. Luke's voice was tight as he came around the side of the house. Amanda followed, wearing sunglasses that hid her eyes. You've been ignoring my calls. I straightened up, wiping dirt from my hands on my jeans. Been busy. Too busy to talk to your son? There was an edge to his voice I hadn't heard before. Anger, barely contained. What do you want, Luke? We need to talk. Inside. It wasn't a request. I looked at my son, saw the set of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. Behind him, Amanda stood with her arms crossed, and even with the sunglasses I could feel her glare. All right, I said, leading them to the porch, but I didn't invite them in. We can talk here. Dad, come on. Here is fine. We stood in an awkward triangle on the porch, the afternoon sun beating down. Luke ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from his childhood when he was frustrated. We heard you went to see a lawyer, he said. My blood went cold. Who told you that? Doesn't matter. Dad, why would you do that? We're trying to help you, and you're treating us like we're the enemy. I wanted legal advice about my property, I said evenly. That's my right. It makes it seem like you don't trust us, Amanda said, her voice sharp. We're family. Are you? The words came out before I could stop them. Because family doesn't pressure and manipulate. Family doesn't show up with papers and demands and try to take what isn't theirs. Luke's face flushed red. Take? Dad, I'm not trying to take anything. I'm trying to help you plan for your future before you're too old to make good decisions. I'm 68, not senile. Maybe not yet, Amanda said. But how long before you are? How long before you fall down these stairs, or forget to turn off the stove, or wander into traffic? We're trying to prevent that. By taking my house. By ensuring your assets are protected, Luke said. Dad, you're being paranoid. Frank, Dawson probably filled your head with nonsense because he wants to bill you for legal services you don't need. Frank's a friend. He gave me honest advice. Frank's a small-town lawyer who hasn't practiced real estate law in any meaningful way in decades, Amanda said dismissively. He doesn't understand the complexities of estate planning or property management. And you do? I asked her directly. What's your interest in all this, Amanda? You married my son less than 3 years ago. Why do you care so much about my house? Her jaw tightened. I care about Luke's future, our future. And right now, you're standing in the way of it. The mask had slipped. There it was, the truth, laid bare in the afternoon sun. Luke put a hand on her arm. Amanda, that's not, he turned to me. Dad, she didn't mean it like that. Yes, she did. I looked at my son. Luke, I know about the development deal. His face went pale. For a moment, nobody spoke. A breeze rustled through the oak tree, carrying the scent of honeysuckle from Mrs. Henderson's yard next door. What development deal? He asked, but his voice lacked conviction. The tech company, the campus they're planning. The land acquisition along the county road. I watched his expression carefully. The reason my property is suddenly worth millions instead of thousands. Luke's shoulders sagged. Caught. Dad, I was going to tell you. When? After I'd signed everything over? After you'd sold it out from under me? It's not like that, he said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. I was trying to make sure you were taken care of. If we sold to the development company, we could split the profits. You'd never have to worry about money again. We? I repeated. You mean you and Amanda? Because last I checked, it's my property. You're being selfish, Amanda said. That's what this is about. You're hoarding a resource that could change Luke's life, our lives, out of some sentimental attachment to wood and nails. This house is my life, I said quietly. Every board, every nail, every corner holds a memory of the people I love. Your mother, I said to Luke. She's in the kitchen where she taught you to make cookies. She's in the garden where she grew flowers. She's in our bedroom where we dreamed together for 34 years. This isn't just wood and nails. This is everything I built for our family. She's dead, Dad, Luke said, and his voice was cold. She's been dead for 10 years. At some point, you have to let go and move on. The words hit me like a physical blow. I staggered back a step, gripping the porch railing. Get off my property, I said. Dad, now both of you. Get off my property, and don't come back until you can remember what family actually means. Amanda grabbed Luke's arm. Come on. He's not going to listen to reason. We'll have to do this another way. They left, tires spinning gravel as they pulled out too fast. I stood on the porch until the sound of their engine faded, then sank into the rocking chair Margaret and I used to share on summer evenings. My hands were shaking. Tommy found me there an hour later, tears drying on my face. Saw Luke's car, he said softly. Figured I'd check on you. I told him everything. The development deal, the confrontation, Luke's cold dismissal of Margaret's memory. Tommy listened, his weathered face growing darker. That boy needs a reality check, he said when I finished. What Amanda said, that's not how family talks to family. He's my son. Tom, he's all I have left. Then he needs to start acting like it. Tommy stood up. Come on. You're having dinner at my place tonight. Maria's making enchiladas, and you're not sitting here alone. I let him pull me up, grateful for friends who felt more like family than my own blood. But that night, lying in Luke's old bedroom at Tommy's house because I couldn't face my empty home, I made a decision. If Luke wanted a war over my property, I'd give him one. But I'd do it on my terms, with the truth on my side. The next morning, I called Frank Dawson. I want to change my will. Over the next 2 weeks, Frank and I worked on a new estate plan. The house and property would go into a trust upon my death, with specific instructions that it couldn't be sold for at least 10 years. During that time, any proceeds from leasing or other arrangements would go to maintaining the property and supporting local community programs, the VFW, the library, the Youth Baseball League. After 10 years, if Luke could demonstrate he understood the value of what I'd built, the property could transfer to him. If not, it would be donated to the town for a community center. This protects your wishes and your legacy, Frank explained. And it ensures Luke can't just flip the property for a quick profit. What if he contests it? He can try, but this is airtight. You're of sound mind, we have witnesses, and the terms are clear. He'd have a hell of a time breaking it. I signed the new will on June 1st, 2025. Frank filed it properly, gave me copies, and shook my hand. You did the right thing, John. This house deserves better than being turned into a parking lot. That evening, I called Luke. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice guarded. Dad, I changed my will, I said without preamble. The house isn't yours anymore. Not automatically. Thought you should know. Silence on the other end. Then, you did what? You heard me. I'm protecting what I built. If you want this house someday, you'll have to earn it by showing some respect for what it represents. Dad, you can't do this. I can, and I did. Frank Dawson handled it. Everything's legal and filed. I took a breath. Luke, I love you. You're my son, and nothing changes that. But I won't let you or Amanda bulldoze me for money. When you're ready to have a real conversation about family instead of real estate, you know where to find me. I hung up before he could respond. My phone rang continuously for the next hour, Luke, then Amanda, then Luke again. I let every call go to voicemail. Finally, the calls stopped. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, on a Thursday afternoon, a black Mercedes pulled into my driveway. The man who got out wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. He walked up to my porch like he owned it. "John Mitchell?" he asked. "Who's asking?" "My name is Richard Saunders. I represent Horizon Development Corporation. I understand you own this property, the tech company." They'd sent someone directly. "I do," I said carefully. "Mr. Mitchell, may I have a few moments of your time? I'd like to discuss a business opportunity that could be very beneficial for you." I should have sent him away, but curiosity got the better of me. 5 minutes. He smiled, all polished charm, and followed me to the porch. He declined my offer of coffee, instead pulling documents from his briefcase. "Mr. Mitchell, I'll be direct. Horizon is assembling land for a major development project in this area. Your property is positioned ideally within our planned campus. We're prepared to offer you $4 million for this house and land." $4 million. The number was incomprehensible. "That's more than triple the market value," he continued. "And we'd handle all closing costs, give you 6 months to relocate, even help you find a new property anywhere you'd like. This is a generous offer, Mr. Mitchell. How did you know to come here?" I asked. "Did my son send you?" Something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe, that I'd guessed. "We do work with local real estate consultants who provide information about properties in our target area. But I can't disclose specific sources. Luke told you to come here, Mr. Mitchell. The source of our information doesn't change the validity of our offer. Get off my property." His professional smile faltered. "I'm sorry?" I said, "Get off my property. I'm not selling. Not to you, not to anyone. Mr. Mitchell, please be reasonable. This is a life-changing amount of money. I don't care if it's $100 million, I said, standing up. "This is my home. It's not for sale. Now leave before I call the sheriff." He left, but not before handing me a business card. "When you change your mind, call me. This offer won't be available indefinitely." I tore up the card the moment his car disappeared down the road. But the visits didn't stop. Over the next week, I had 3 more representatives from Horizon show up, each with increasingly generous offers. $5 million, $6 million, $7 million for my house and land. "Every property owner around you is sold," the last one said. "You're the only holdout. We're willing to make this worth your while, Mr. Mitchell, but our patience isn't infinite." "Then I guess you'll have to build around me," I said. The implications were clear. If I didn't sell, they'd make my life difficult. Construction noise, traffic, loss of privacy. They'd turn my peaceful corner of the world into a nightmare, hoping I'd break and sell. I called Frank. "They're threatening me." "Not directly, but the message is clear." "They can't force you to sell," Frank said. "Stand your ground, John. Legally, you're protected." But legal protection didn't stop the phone calls, the letters, the constant pressure. And it didn't stop Luke from calling every day, sometimes screaming, sometimes crying, begging me to take one of the offers. "Dad, this is insane. $7 million. We could both live like kings for the rest of our lives." "I don't want to be a king," I told him. "I just want to be home." "Then you're a fool," he said, and hung up. The town rallied around me. When word got out that I was being pressured, neighbors started stopping by. Mrs. Henderson brought me casseroles. Bill Crawford sat on my porch for hours, his one good hand holding a shotgun across his lap. Just in case anyone gets ideas, Tommy organized the VFW guys to rotate staying with me, ensuring I was never alone when the Horizon representatives showed up. "This is what community means," Tommy said one evening as we watched the sunset. "We take care of our own." But the pressure was wearing on me. I wasn't sleeping well, jumping at every car that came down the road. My blood pressure was up, according to Doc Patterson. The stress was taking its toll. And then, on a humid evening in late June, everything came to a head. Luke and Amanda showed up with the sheriff's deputy. "Dad," Luke said, his face pale. "We need to talk. We're worried about you." The deputy, a young guy I didn't recognize, stepped forward. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Deputy Harris. Your son has expressed concerns about your well-being and decision-making capacity. I need to ask you some questions." My heart sank. They were trying to have me declared incompetent. "I'm fine," I said. "My son is trying to steal my property." "Dad, that's not true," Luke said. "We're trying to protect you from making a terrible mistake. You've been under enormous stress, refusing offers that could secure your future, acting paranoid." "Paranoid?" I laughed bitterly. "You sent a development company after me. You've been calling my neighbors, trying to make me look incompetent." "That's not paranoia, Luke. That's reality." Deputy Harris held up a hand. "Mr. Mitchell, can you tell me today's date?" "June 27th, 2025. "Who's the president?" "Donald Trump. Can you count backward from 100 by sevens?" I did it, perfectly, while Luke and Amanda watched. The deputy asked more questions: where I was, what I'd eaten that day, basic cognitive tests. I answered everything correctly, my mind sharp despite the exhaustion. Finally, Deputy Harris turned to Luke. "Sir, your father appears to be fully competent. Unless you have medical documentation suggesting otherwise. He's refusing to accept $7 million for his property," Amanda said. "That's not rational behavior. Ma'am, that's a personal decision, not evidence of incompetence. Plenty of people refuse to sell property for personal reasons." He looked at me. "Mr. Mitchell, are you being coerced or threatened in any way?" "Yes," I said. "By my son and his wife." Luke's face went white. "Dad, they've been pressuring me for months to sign over my property. When I refused, they sent developers to harass me. They've been trying to make me look incompetent so they can take control of my assets." "That's financial elder abuse, isn't it, Deputy?" Deputy Harris's expression hardened. He turned to Luke and Amanda. "Is this true?" "We're trying to help him," Luke said desperately. "He's making terrible decisions. Sounds like he's making his own decisions, which is his right." The deputy's hand moved to his belt. "I'm going to need you both to leave this property. If Mr. Mitchell wants to file a complaint about harassment, he can come to the station." "You can't be serious," Amanda said. "He's a senile old man. Ma'am, I've assessed him and he's clearly competent. You need to leave, now." They left, Amanda furious, Luke broken. I watched them go, my heart aching but my resolve firm. Deputy Harris stayed for a few minutes, giving me information about restraining orders and elder abuse resources. "You've got good neighbors, Mr. Mitchell. They've been calling the station, keeping us informed. You're not alone in this." "Thank you, Deputy." After he left, I sat on my porch in the gathering darkness. Tommy came by, and Bill, and Mrs. Henderson. We didn't say much, just sat together. A community holding strong against the forces trying to tear one of us down. But I knew this wasn't over. Luke and Amanda wouldn't give up $7 million without a fight. And I needed to be ready for whatever came next. The real battle was just beginning. July brought a heat wave that baked the Ohio countryside, turning the grass brown and sending everyone searching for air conditioning. But the weather wasn't the only thing making me sweat. The pressure from Horizon Development intensified. They filed petitions with the town council, held public meetings about economic development and progress, painting me as the stubborn old man standing in the way of prosperity for Millbrook. Some people in town started to waver. The promise of jobs, new businesses, increased property values, it was tempting. I'd hear whispers at the hardware store, see people avoid my eyes at the grocery store. The town that had rallied around me was starting to fracture. But Tommy, Bill, Mrs. Henderson, and a core group of old-timers stood firm. "They'll build their campus and be gone in 10 years, Tommy said at a town meeting. "But John Mitchell has been part of this community for 50 years. We don't abandon our own for a paycheck." Still, I could feel the tide turning. And then I got a letter from Horizon's legal team, threatening eminent domain. They were going to claim my property was needed for public good and force me to sell. "They can't do that," I told Frank in his office. my hands shaking as I held the letter. Can they? Frank's face was grim. They can try. Eminent domain is tricky. They'd need to prove genuine public benefit, get government approval. But with enough money and influence, double quotes, he trailed off. John, I'm not going to lie to you. This fight could get ugly, expensive, and drawn out. Are you sure you want to keep going? I thought about Margaret, about Luke as a boy, about every nail I'd hammered and every board I'd cut. I'm sure. Then we fight. The legal battle consumed July and August. Frank filed countersuit, arguing abuse of eminent domain. We had to attend hearings, give depositions, deal with motions and counter-motions. The stress was crushing, and I could feel it in my chest, in my sleepless nights, in the way my hands shook when I tried to drink my morning coffee. Through it all, Luke kept calling. Sometimes he'd be angry, screaming about how I was ruining his life. Sometimes he'd cry, begging me to understand how much this money meant to him and Amanda. Sometimes he'd try to guilt me, saying Margaret would have wanted me to provide for my family. That last one hurt the most, because I knew Margaret would have been heartbroken by all of this. I stopped answering his calls entirely. Doc Patterson prescribed blood pressure medication and told me I needed to reduce stress, or you're going to have a heart attack, John. I can't, I told him. Not yet. In early September, Frank called me with news. The eminent domain claim was rejected. The judge said, Horizon failed to demonstrate sufficient public benefit that would justify forcing you to sell. The relief almost knocked me over. So it's done? The eminent domain is. But John, Horizon isn't giving up. They're filing an appeal, and they're exploring other options. This isn't over. It felt like it would never be over. Like I'd spend the rest of my life fighting to keep what was mine. And then, on September 15th, everything changed. I was sitting on my porch in the late afternoon, exhausted from another meeting with Frank, when a car pulled up. Not Horizon, not Luke, a silver Honda I didn't recognize. A young woman got out, maybe 30 years old, with dark hair and a professional but kind face. She walked up to my porch with a folder under her arm. Mr. Mitchell? I'm Sarah Chun, investigative journalist with the Columbus Dispatch. Do you have a few minutes? I was so tired of talking to people, but something in her manner made me nod. What's this about? I've been investigating Horizon Development's land acquisition practices, she said, sitting in the chair I offered. And I think you should know some things about the deal your son was involved in. My stomach clenched. What do you mean? She opened her folder, pulling out documents. Horizon hired local real estate consultants to identify properties for acquisition. Your son, Luke Mitchell, was one of those consultants. He provided Horizon with detailed information about property owners, family situations, vulnerabilities they could exploit. The words felt like stones dropping into still water, rippling out in all directions. He was working for them, not officially. He was paid through a shell company as a local liaison. But yes, he was working for them. She showed me bank records payments to Luke totaling over $200,000. In exchange for information and assistance securing properties, he was promised a commission on any successful acquisitions. If they'd gotten your property, he would have received 5% of the sale price. 5% of $7 million. $350,000. My son had been trying to steal my home for money. Not inheritance, not my well-being. Just cash. There's more, Sarah said gently. Horizon has been using aggressive tactics on multiple property owners. Harassment, intimidation, fraudulent offers. You're not the only one who's been pressured. The company has a history of this in other states. They come in, buy up land through whatever means necessary, build their campus, and leave local communities dealing with the aftermath. She showed me more document stories from Colorado, North Carolina, Oregon, the same pattern everywhere. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice hollow. Because I'm writing an expose. Horizon's practices are potentially criminal. And your case, the son working with them against his own father, it's the centerpiece. I wanted to give you the opportunity to tell your side of the story. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt empty. I need to think about it, I said. Sarah left me her card and the folder of evidence. Call me when you're ready, Mr. Mitchell, but don't wait too long. This story is going to break with or without you. That night, I spread the documents across my kitchen table, the same table where Luke had done his homework, where Margaret and I had played cards, where we'd laughed and fought and built our life together. And I looked at the proof of my son's betrayal, laid out in bank records and email exchanges. He'd sold me out, completely and deliberately. I called Frank. I need you to look at something. He came over immediately, and I showed him everything. His face grew darker as he read. John, this is fraud. Possibly conspiracy, definitely unethical. With this evidence, we can not only stop Horizon, we can sue Luke for damages. He violated fiduciary duty as your heir, engaged in financial elder abuse. I don't want to sue my son, I said quietly, but he tried to steal from you. He's still my son. Frank looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But the thought of dragging Luke through court, of destroying him completely, made me sick. At least let me use this to stop Horizon, Frank said. This evidence could shut down their entire operation here. I nodded. That much I could agree to. Frank took the documents and over the next week, coordinated with Sarah Chun and the State Attorney General's office. The expose ran in the Columbus Dispatch on September 24th, front page. Development company accused of fraud in rural Ohio land grab. The article was devastating. It detailed Horizon's practices, named Luke as a paid informant, and quoted multiple property owners about the harassment they'd endured. It included photos, including one of my house, with the caption, Mitchell, a 68-year-old Vietnam veteran, refused to sell despite offers exceeding $7 million. The response was immediate. The state launched an investigation. Horizon's stock price dropped. Local property owners who'd sold started talking about fraud claims. And the development deal ground to a halt while regulators examined every aspect of Horizon's operations. My phone rang constantly, reporters, lawyers, neighbors apologizing for doubting me. The town council held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to oppose Horizon's development plans until the investigation concluded. But I didn't hear from Luke. 2 days after the article ran, Amanda showed up, alone. She looked different, makeup smudged, hair not perfect, wearing jeans and a simple shirt instead of her usual designer clothes. She stood on my porch, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. He didn't know, she said. What? Luke didn't know I'd been feeding information to Horizon. He thought I was just doing research about property values, being a good wife, helping him plan your future. She laughed bitterly. He believed me when I said we were protecting you. I stared at her. You're saying this was all you? The Horizon connection, yes. I worked with them before, in marketing. When I heard about the Millbrook project, I saw an opportunity. I told them about Luke's father, about the property. I set up the consultant payments in Luke's name, told him it was just market research money. She wiped her eyes. He didn't know I was taking a cut. He didn't know about the commission on your sale. Why are you telling me this? Because he's devastated, she said. He saw the article. He saw his name, saw what people are saying about him. And when he confronted me, I told him the truth. She looked at me directly. He's not who you think he is, John. He's not some evil son trying to steal from you. He's a man who got manipulated by his wife into thinking he was doing the right thing. He still pressured me, I said. He still tried to take my house. Because I convinced him it was for your own good. I'm not excusing what he did. He's an adult. He made his choices. But I want you to know that everything he said, everything he did, he thought he was protecting you from yourself. She turned to leave, then stopped. He loves you. And he's at our hotel room right now, crying because he thinks he's destroyed your relationship forever. If you want to fix this, don't wait too long. I've already filed for divorce. I'm leaving Millbrook tomorrow. But Luke... He's not leaving until he knows if he still has a father. She left. And I stood on my porch for a long time, watching the sun set over the property I'd fought so hard to keep. The next morning, I drove to the Holiday Inn on the edge of town. I found Luke's room number 226 and knocked. He answered looking like hell, unshaven, red-eyed, wearing the same clothes I'd seen him in 2 days ago. When he saw me, his face crumpled. "Dad, I'm so sorry," he said, and started crying. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what Amanda was doing. I thought I was helping you. I thought the house was too much for you, that you needed." He couldn't continue, just stood there sobbing. I pulled my son into my arms and held him while he cried, the way I had when he was a boy and fell off his bike, when his first girlfriend broke his heart, when Margaret died and the world seemed too heavy to bear. "I know," I said. "I know." We spent hours talking. Luke told me everything, how Amanda had manipulated him, made him feel like I was slipping, convinced him that taking control of my assets was the only way to protect me. He told me about the financial pressure she'd put on him, the expectations, the constant push for more money, better status, bigger success. "I got lost," he said. "I forgot who I was, where I came from. I forgot that this town, this house, this is what matters. Not money, not deals, not any of it. You forgot," I said. "But you remembered. Too late. Not too late, son. Never too late." We cried together, father and son, in that generic hotel room. And slowly, painfully, we started to rebuild. Over the following weeks, the investigation into Horizon continued. Amanda was charged with fraud and conspiracy. The commission payments to Luke were deemed obtained through fraud, and he had to return them, which wiped out most of his savings. He lost his job in Chicago. The scandal made him radioactive in real estate circles. But he came home. Back to Millbrook, back to the house where he'd grown up. He took a job at the hardware store, moved into an apartment above the diner. And slowly, day by day, we repaired our relationship. We had dinner together every Sunday, at the kitchen table Margaret had loved. We worked on projects around the house, fixing the garage door, repainting the porch, replacing old windows. Luke joined the town's volunteer fire department. He started coaching Little League, just like I had. He became part of the community again. One Saturday in November, as we were raking leaves in the front yard, Luke stopped and looked at the house. "I almost destroyed this," he said. "For money, for greed, for a woman who didn't actually love me." "But you didn't," I said. "The house is still standing. We're still standing. Why did you forgive me?" He asked. "After everything I did, everything I said, why?" I thought about that question, about Margaret, about the years we'd spent building this life. "Because you're my son," I said finally. "Because family means fighting for each other, not with each other. Because I remember the boy who helped me plant that tree." I nodded at Margaret's oak, its leaves gold and red in the autumn sun. "And I know he's still in there somewhere." Luke wiped his eyes. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," I said, and he laughed through his tears. "But you've got me anyway." In December, Horizon Development withdrew their plans for the Millbrook campus. The investigation had uncovered too much fraud, and the negative publicity wasn't worth it. My property value dropped back to normal levels, still comfortable, but not life-changing. I didn't care. I wasn't selling anyway. Frank helped me revise my will again. The house would still go into a trust, but with a provision that if Luke continued to demonstrate commitment to the community and to family values, it would transfer to him after my death with the option to keep it or sell it, his choice. But the decision would be his to make wisely, not impulsively. "He's earned a second chance," I told Frank. "You're a better man than most, John," Frank said. On Christmas Eve, Luke and I decorated the house together, stringing lights the way I used to do it, so many that the electric bill would be outrageous, but I didn't care. Neighbors stopped by Tommy and Maria, Bill and his wife, Mrs. Henderson with cookies, Doc Patterson with his medical bag, just in case we overdid it. We all gathered in my living room, eating and talking and laughing. Luke told stories about his childhood, about the mistakes he'd made and the lessons he'd learned. People listened, and slowly, I could see them forgiving him too, welcoming him back into the community he'd abandoned. At midnight, we drove through town looking at Christmas lights, just like we used to when Luke was a boy. The whole town sparkled, every house trying to outshine the others. When we came back home, I made hot cocoa and we sat by the fireplace, the smell of pine filling the room. "Thank you," Luke said quietly, "for not giving up on me." "Never," I said. "You're my son, always." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn, and I thought about the year we'd endured. The pressure, the betrayal, the pain, but also the redemption, the forgiveness, the healing. My house was still standing. My family was still intact. My community was still strong. In the spring, we planted a new tree beside Margaret's oak maple for new beginnings. Luke and I dug the hole together, our hands working in rhythm the way they used to, and we patted down the dirt around the sapling. "This tree's gonna be here long after we're gone," I told him, echoing the words I'd said 40 years ago. "Just like this house," Luke said. "Just like family. We build something that lasts." I looked at my son, older now, humbled by his mistakes but stronger for them, and I saw Margaret in his eyes, saw the values we'd tried to instill, saw hope for the future. "Yeah, son," I said. "Something that lasts." On the 4th of July 2026, the town held its annual celebration. Luke and I manned the grill at the neighborhood block party, flipping burgers and hot dogs while kids ran through sprinklers and adults played horseshoes. That evening, we all gathered at Henderson Lake for fireworks, and as the explosions of color lit up the sky, I stood with my arm around my son's shoulders, surrounded by the community that had never let me fall. This was what I'd been fighting for all along. Not property value, not money, not legal victories. This family, community, belonging. The things that couldn't be measured in dollars, but were worth more than any amount of money. As the finale burst overhead in cascades of red, white, and blue, I looked around at the faces illuminated in the momentary brightness. Tommy and Maria, Bill and his wife, Mrs. Henderson, Doc Patterson, Frank Dawson, all the neighbors who'd become family over decades of shared life. And I looked at Luke, tears streaming down his face as he watched the fireworks, and I knew we'd made it through. The house was still standing. The family was still intact. The values that mattered most had survived the test. Later that night, back on my porch with the sounds of celebration fading in the distance, Luke turned to me. "I want to ask you something," he said. "Shoot." "When the time comes, and I'm not wishing it anytime soon, Dad, but when the time comes and this house is mine, I want your blessing to turn it into something the community can use. Maybe a community center or a place where families can gather. Not sell it, not develop it. Keep it, but make it serve a purpose bigger than just one family."